Hi everyone. Today in this video we are going to discuss a very important topic and which has already come in the exams of 2018 IAS Mains under PSIR optional of political science. And here this is going to be a very important topic which we'll be discussing, and we'll see how best it could be useful for all of us. As you know, this video is for PSIR optional and international relations of WPT, and we are going to discuss, and generally we discuss basically for the series of exams, be it like IAS Mains or university exams across the horizon. And this elaborate political philosophy will be quite useful for the aspirants of civil services, also for university and college students, and in addition to that, those who are preparing for UGC NET, GRF, SET, SLET under PSIR is quite useful. Dear friends, so in this connection, what's the idea of starting this topic today? The very purpose, the very logic is aspirants should know how actually answer can be written from exams point of view. So we have picked up today one particular topic from, as I said, 2018 IAS Mains exams on JS Mill, and the question on that is comment on John Stuart Mill as a reluctant Democrat by CL Wayper. This is going to be discussed under episode number 11 and under the banner of AGSIS Academy. So as we know, like for anybody, we don't need to be, you can say like terrified or having fear psychosis. What happens? Life may be very difficult. It may be looking like is hard time, but there is always something you can do and succeed at. It was well said long back by Stephen Hawking. So from that perspective, we are going to start about this particular question's answer, and later we'll see also which you are already seeing on Montesquieu's like the balanced Democrat, and many things are about to come. So let's start about the video and how it could be useful for all of us from exams point of view. Let's start. So if we talk about like JS Mill, when we talk about like turning him a reluctant Democrat from CL Wayper side, let us see. JS Mill was basically an exponent of utilitarianism. He was English philosopher and economist, and he was very prominent as a publicist, and he was in the age of reformation of 19th century, you can say, and of course an ethical theorist. J.S. Mill, basically he was born and died from 1806 and lived up to 1873. As you know, he was the most influential English language philosopher of 19th century, we can say. So before actually focusing on the answer of it, let's have some important works of J.S. Mill. J.S. Mill's most important works include, we can say, which is very prominent, that is on utilitarianism, written on 1861, then on liberty 1859, and then principles of political economy 1848, and the subjection of women 1863. These are the important works which he had written and very popular basically. And he talked about utilitarianism. Before we go to the answer directly, this is kind of introduction of him so that it can be useful. And utilitarianism is a very focal point of his theory, so we are discussing about this, just few lines on this. And he defined it as a theory based on the principle that actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness, wrong as they tend to produce the reverse of happiness. And Mill defines happiness as pleasure and the absence of pain. Dear friends, further if we talk about basically J.S. Mill, profoundly He influenced in shaping 19th century British thought, ideas, discourse, political perceptions of his time. As you know, every political thinker tries to find out the solutions for the problems the society encounters. And it's no surprise he also tried to do so. And of course, he has a big name, and his substantial corpus of works include also, besides what I said, like epistemology, economics, political philosophy, ethics, religion, current affairs, and metaphysics. So he was a voracious writer. He wrote a lot, and he tried to shape and influence the society of his time. Now, coming directly to the question why basically he's called, uh, you can say, reluctant democrat, and before that also, all this what we are trying to get, we'll try to find the answer from his considerations on representative government of J.S. Mill, where he showed distrustful of democracy. And why was reluctant democrat? Let's understand the question first. This refers to, though he was a democrat, but he was a democrat in the sense he was not very much of the opinion that democracy should be in universal character. He was of the firm belief this is not everybody's cup of tea, and he basically, as a democrat, he believed, of course, in democracy, that is so important and should be. But the point is, from his perspective, this is not something which should be given to everybody. This is not something that the means of property and prosperity and happiness. The democracy makes people better. Yes, but for those who really deserve it. He was reluctant regarding democracy, regarding universality of this principle. Reason being, he wanted to see the society really democracy should be used in the right perspective. He wanted to see the democracy for those persons who are not able to handle should not be given this chance to practice. Dear friends, he wanted to see the society progressing, but at the same time, he was never of the idea that democracy should be misused by the tyranny majority. He was very much aware about the fact democracy is something which could be, if turning out to be a torch bearer as a sacred document for the country to move ahead. At the same time, it has to be safeguarded from the nonsense, safeguarded from the elements which are reluctant to really align with this particular concept. Dear friends, the very objective and purpose, he never wanted to lose that, to make it as a mass democratic tool. Of course, he was of the time where 18th century was of revolutions and 19th century was of, you can say, consolidation of capitalism as a socio-economic political system. And so we can see of his time what he writes in his different perspectives of writing, that the era was something very much turbulent era, a transitional phase which was no static, it was in dynamic different shape and transitional. So therefore many factors were influencing, and there were turmoil also regarding regimes, what particular regime should really be suitable to run the government in the right perspective, in a peaceful and democratic way, and without creating problems, and that governance should be inclusive rather than exclusive. So there were many issues from his perspective, and he wanted to take it in a way that should be useful for the entire country, but at the same time should not be, you can say, hijacked by some sections of the society in the name of democracy. So he was reluctant also in that sense. And horrible results of market based capitalist economy, which he was really feeling that these are the sources of tool of exploitation, and industrial revolutions like extreme exploitation of labor class and poor, where child labor, poor wages, working hours, all these were something uh, affecting his thought processes, his perceptions, and he was the one who was thinking, is it really democracy? Is it really democratic tool could be applicably or could be useful right across sections of the society at a larger scale? Is it something worth? So many questions were hunting from his side, and the answer was not that which could have convinced him that he can turn out to be a direct Democrat rather than reluctant Democrat. Dear friends, democracy of that time also, when we see, every principle, every theory, or every thought process does not overnight really is created. It takes time. It starts from different perspectives, different factors, different components before reaching its pinnacle. So was the case of democracy of that time. It was in the developmental stage and transition from monarchy and autocracy. Those were the issues, monarchical issues, autocratic issues, and dictatorial issues, where like regimes were something which needed to be, you can say, universal from the perspective of ruling the ruled, and not should be exclusiveness based on that policy, as that harms the society rather than does good services. Of course, J.S. Mill was Democrat from the perspective of 19th century point of view, and in his great work, he also talks about considerations on representative government, where, as I said, he has showed his reluctance. He has showed that democracy in the society to be applicable is fine, but its misuse, it's like other factors, nuances that really are not good for everybody. Therefore, what is important thing is considerations on representative government, you can say, are also very very significant of his writing. And then he wanted democracy should be implanted, but like not as a whole, in toto. And of course, he believed that democracy alone gives happiness, prosperity, freedom. He was also knowing this fact. At the same time, he was very much apprehensive that this alone cannot be the criterion for everybody to implement in the society. He wanted people should be on the positive note, but the point was he was knowing, he had already known, and he was knowing about the state of nature of human being. Also, if we see from the perspective of Thomas Hobbes, already he had painted about the state of nature, how chaotic it was, how lawlessness it was, and how many factors prevailing, and they were confronting each other, and there was hardly any tool of security where like individual person can feel that he or she is at the safe mode in the society, can live properly, prosper and move on. That was not the sense of security prevailing at that point of time of Thomas Hobbes. So he was aware about the facts of the state of nature of human beings, how and in what way they behave. So what was important from his understanding of psychology was that yes, considerations on representative government are fine, that should be, but not at the cost of the mass, not at the cost of the country. And therefore, he was reluctant to have democracy everywhere. He was not of the view that democracy should be pervasive, as it will not be able to be protected from those crooks who are not really respecting democracy, and that could be dangerous for the society from all perspectives. And according to Mill, J.S. Mill, he said, look, democracy is not something that is not a gift to be distributed everywhere. It is suitable only for those people who believe in good governance, who believe in the society which could be inclusive, and that should be better. benevolent despotism is better than democracy. There are many pros and cons and measurement and options this being discussed about, like how much this democracy could be useful, how much that could be really you can say fruitful for the society at large. And he also talked about, that was the reason he talked about like true democracy and false democracy, that democracy also has own shadows and cannot be regarded that it is purely applicable to each one of us. It may have variations, it may have variable factors. So therefore in that sense, democracy of numbers, which is the degeneracy of all government, is false democracy. Basically he talks about like democracy in true sense should be used as a true democracy, not like uh, uh, you can say degeneracy form of government that can lead to false democracy, only like that can turn out to be parallel to mirage of the desert. Therefore in that sense he was very much apprehensive that democracy should be only applicable where it is desirable, and about the principle of every man to count for one and no one to count for more than one would mean a government of least educated class and manual laborers. What is important is he always said that if democracy should be there, then that should be properly inculcated as a part of the society, and he regarded rights to participate in liberty, suffrage, and who had the character of self-control and interest in using these terminologies that could be useful for the promotion of democracy, which could be promoted at a level that is desirable for the society's development. As you know, any thinker, any political thinker of any stature, if he is in that domain, he or she tries to find out the solutions of the problem which prevailing at that point of time. So the first objective for any political thinker happens to be to find the prevailing problems of the society, give some solutions to that. Therefore that can be useful from any perspective, and then the society can move on, can progress in that sense. Dear friends, so we are discussing about like the principle of every man to count for one and no one to count for more than one. According to J.S. Mill, this was something which was having flaws, because if in a given population, if every head will be counted for a vote, that means that any Tom, Dick, Harry will be able to elect the government. And on that basis, those votes which are not like aware about like who they are going to really elect and vote for, that will be something disastrous, which like J.S. Mill never wants this. What is significant in this connection is he feels that somebody who could be educated, who could be having the sense and rationality about democracy, about understanding how actually this democracy works, then only that person or segment of the society will be able to appreciate what really functions for the governance and how best the government could be, would be the representative of the mass, must be a good government. Dear friends, so he talks about also about like liberty should be conferred only to those who had the character of self-control. He also doesn't talk about like liberty being given to each one of the society. He feels that this is again very very significant, and only those who deserve this should have a perception about like how the democracy functions, what are the characteristic features, and what is the important factor which can be really helpful in running the democracy. Simply giving uh, or giving a chance to vote for and having the equal opportunity will not solve the purpose, and therefore every element of society should have of course the understanding of democracy, and until then that doesn't happen, that everybody should not be given universal suffrage. Yes, those electorates, those citizens of the society who are having understanding, who are educated and property class can be given, can be imparted those kind of rights, proportional representation, or who can understand and appreciate the rule of governance, that will be helpful for running the democracy, not the other way around. Dear friends, in this connection, further Mill cautions about democracy not because he did not have faith in it, rather he has faith and he has also understanding about this. But the point is what he understands, what he makes us understand, or of that time to the people, that democracy is not something which everybody should be able to handle. And then he is cautious in giving leverage to each one citizen of the society. He is telling this should be somewhat selective in understanding, in appreciating, or in rendering the votes on the part of the electorate, and that is very significant. If you go from the eyes or perspective of Sabine and other political thinkers like then, J.S. Mill has the perception that also if in a given chance, if the majority will be given entire power to elect the government, then what will happen to the minority, and how, whose rights will be taken care of, who will take care of rights of minorities. And then can't it be like there should be oppressive system and intolerant public opinion should be completely against the very wishes of the minorities, that will again run parallel the very motive, the very objective for which the purpose the democracy will be could be used or could be utilized, that will not solve the very objective of it. So no doubt, uh, then why the question is like he is a reluctant Democrat. What does it mean? Reluctant here means like he wants democracy, but he doesn't want democracy that type, which could be only utilized for the sake of utilization. He wants, unless the situation really arises or reaches to that level where everybody can feel, yes, that is the high time where on the basis of democracy should be able to deliver on from the governmental perspective and who could be real representation of the people, not the other way around. Significant on that basis, it's also very important that democracy should play important role, not undue role. And as we know, like J.S. Mill, definitely he happened to be the champion of liberty who always advocated of democracy. But the point is, he does not consider it at the first priority for running the government because of lack of that opportunities, where he feels that that is not the prerequisite time for the development of the state or the individual unless that level reaches. He was also reluctant towards democracy also because there should not be like everybody by having this vote system should turn out to be barbaric, or who can adopt democracy but like should not understand and interpret democracy the way it should have been. So he was having this fear psychosis, therefore he was not understanding and he was not having the perception that this should be given freely to each and everybody of the society who has least understanding about this. Or if we talk about like from the perspective of even Alex de Tocqueville, who called democracy like tyranny of majority, so that was the perception what he was feeling, and he suggested many forms of votes, like he said it could be even like plural voting can be given, or open ballot system, or weighted voting system that should be given those who are educated a lot, those who understand. Then in that sense it will be very much useful that how best this particular the new concept of democracy can be utilized for the governance perspective, for the ruling perspective, for the public, and everybody should be really beneficial about this democracy, the new setup what like a country can have. And that is important to what he said, that everybody should not be given. And he is also reluctant democrat because he, though he is the champion of democracy, but at the same time he says because it has high value, it has tremendous significance, so it cannot be simply put like this and given to anybody. In later due course of time, if we see from the perspective of Ernest Barker, who called J.S. Mill nothing but prophet of empty liberty and abstract individual. So there are many perceptions views and counter views, but like this was just to conclude, let's see, he wanted to flourish democracy, he wanted to see the democracy should be there, but like he told, the time has not come, the time is really not like that suitable on the basis of which everybody should be given. So he was somewhat reluctant about like democracy, so he's also called reluctant democrat, and though he had high regard for democracy. So this is how, in that perspective, we can say it's so useful that this should be utilized for the benefit of the society, for the benefit of the country. And then, dear friends, like in this video, what I have tried to say, I have not given you written material here in this particular video, but then I have given you dictation, like, or then given you main ideas, not in written form. So I hope you understand. Sometimes it happens, but like it will be definitely useful what I given, and what you can get from the perspective of exams, UPSC, PCS mains or IAS mains, or like even what you call like university exams or college exams of political science, international relations. Finally, do share, like and subscribe so that you can get the latest notifications about the latest videos. Also, if it's very much helpful for you, do pass on to your friends and relatives so that they also can take benefit out of it. Finally, thanks for watching the video.